Hello, friend. Welcome back or welcome here for the first time. This is Bibishay. And today I have a very big question that I've been asking myself for a while that I finally feel like I'm coming to a point where, I have some degree of peace about the answer. And I just wanted to share that with you guys because we are currently living in a day and age when the world is on fire. There are wars, there are genocides, there's hunger, there's injustice, there's so much cruelty in the world. And when you look at that in the grander scheme of things, sometimes if you are a self-reflective enough kind of a person, there comes a point where you ask yourself, okay, where do I fit in to this bigger picture, being the very small and individual self that I am? And if you are watching this from the comfort of your own home or just going about your life the way I am, then you are privileged. Then we are watching this or creating this from a place of privilege. And then comes in this question of guilt or like the problem of guilt, which I've been feeling. And it's been paralyzing me for the last over a month. And I've just been feeling so guilty about the very basic fundamental things. But along with the guilt, I've also been feeling a huge sense of responsibility. And along with the responsibility, I've been feeling a huge sense of helplessness. That's also been leading me to feel a strong sense of despair. Of like, my life doesn't make any sense. Life doesn't make any sense. It's so unfair that so many people can be going through so much pain and trauma and things that they might never be able to recover from. And who I have no advantage over those people, get to go about my life as normal. I get to create content as normal. I get to like paint my nails and, go about my life as normal. My nails aren't painted, but whatever. And it feels so unfair. So in order to start today's episode, I thought I'd read you guys just an excerpt from a journaling entry. Like I journaled a few days ago and I just felt like I wanted to read you guys a little bit about that, vulnerability and whatnot. I'm going to put my glasses on because my handwriting sucks. And because my handwriting sucks, I'm going to probably stutter as I read this. So bear with me. All right. I miss the absolute freedom that came from creating art purely for art's sake, for the simple reason that I could. But I've come to realize that no one can create art from a hollow interior. No one can truly produce beauty without a regular practice of beholding. And how often do I pause and behold anymore? Life is fast and the world is ugly, and the only constant content we have anymore is reflective of this world's ugly. All the wars and struggles and conspiracy theories and destruction and cruelty and unfairness. So what is there to behold? Where can I go to pause for a moment to take beauty in? Where is this beauty? I know that there is an abundance of beauty in the ordinary, in the mundane, in the things we usually take for granted. There is beauty in the first curtain opening of the day, allowing the sun rays to brighten my room. There is beauty in the very first sip of coffee that trickles through my veins and opens my eyes to new mercies. There is beauty in taking a shower, feeling the warmth of the flowing water coat my skin like the most intimate, all-consuming hug. There is beauty in the ordinary. But how can I pause for so much as a second when all that is ordinary to me is a literal dream to so many people around the world? How can I intentionally romanticize the sunshine, the coffee, the hot water, when just 5 hours away from where I behold, brothers and sisters are scraping for any condensation on any window, for enough contaminated water to wet their tongues long enough for them to repeat their country's name before they are forced to forget it? How can I bask in gratitude over the events that unfolded in my day while I toss and turn under the clean sheets and warm covers in my bed at night, when just 5 hours away from where I live, thousands upon thousands of human beings, over which I have no advantage, are watching their homes be bombed to rubble, taking their brothers, sisters, husbands, and wives down to the nameless, limbless graves with them? And I went on and on and on. It was a very long journal entry, and I guess this is very reflective of exactly how I've been feeling and what I've been thinking. And because this is like such a huge question, and a huge burden, I've just been paralyzed. But over the past week, I've done some digging, and I remembered that I actually graduated with a master's degree in English and comparative literature, specifically in philosophical literature, and specifically in existential literature. The kind of literature, the kinds of literary works and books that reflect or try to answer these questions of our existence, of our being in this world, finding our place in this world. How can I make sense of my own individual existence within this grander whole that doesn't seem to be fair at all, that doesn't seem to make any sense at all? It's not based on merit, because if that were the case, I would have been the first person to be bombed to death. But there are so many innocent people who are being bombed to death. So it's obviously not something you earn. It's just absurd. It seems to be meaningless. And that is what I did my literature and completed my thesis about and on. And my favorite author of all time who discusses these issues is Albert Camus. If you've taken any philosophy classes at all or any literature classes around philosophy at all, you've probably heard of the guy. And his view on existentialism is so profound, and I feel like it is so applicable to everything that's going on in our world today, which is why I thought I'd talk to you guys about him a little bit. So I wanted to tell you about the myth of Sisyphus. So there's a Greek myth, I think it's Greek? Yeah, I don't know, of Sisyphus, this man who is cursed by the gods to, for the rest of his life, have to push a humongous rock or boulder up a mountain, and then as soon as he gets to the top of the mountain, that rock will fall back down, and he has to go back down and push it back up, and it'll fall back down, etc., for the rest of his life. And if he ever decides to stop and not participate in this weird, seemingly meaningless, absurd action, then it will be the death of him, and that would be how he dies. And I want you to keep this idea of the myth of Sisyphus in mind as we continue with the rest of this video. Because today, what I want to talk to you about is the book by Albert Camus, The Plague. Now, just to give you a very brief summary of the book, which I highly, highly, from the bottom of my heart, recommend that you go read it. It will give you so much insight into what it means and what it looks like to be human, and to be an individual with a story, with a name, with a purpose and a goal and a family and all that within a grander whole that just doesn't seem to care. And we'll come back to that. But the gist of the plague, the book, The Plague, what happens is that a plague breaks out in this fictional city called Oran, where everyone's going about their business, doing their own thing, living their lives, not worrying for a second about tomorrow. And then a plague breaks out. And the interesting thing about this novel is that Camus makes sure that we get the story, we get insight, we get access into just what's going on site as this plague is breaking out through the lens of individual characters. And throughout the book, you get to see how each of these individual characters had a life of their own before this plague broke out. We see the story of a journalist who isn't even from Oran, and now all of a sudden the plague breaks out, so there's quarantine. And, no one is allowed to leave Oran in order to not spread the plague. And this guy's like, but I'm not from here. Like, let me out. I'm not from here. This is your business. This is your problem. But does the plague care? It doesn't. You were here when the plague took place, which means you're a part of it now. And you can resist it as much as you want, but you're here now. You're in it now. You're a part of it now. But there's one particular character in this book that, to me, is just the most inspirational ever. And it's Dr. Rieu. Now, Dr. Rieu is a doctor. And so obviously, when a plague breaks out, his job is to take the patients and cure them and heal them and make sure they're okay. But because this plague is so deadly and horrific, what ended up happening? People ended up dying. They just ended up dying. And so for a moment, you get the feeling that like, oh my gosh, my job might not make any sense, because here I am pouring in, like risking my own life, trying my hardest to save these patients from dying, and they keep dying anyway. And I want to read you guys a quote, because someone in the novel goes and tells him, like, you need to take care of yourself. Like, just stop. People are going to continue dying. And what you're doing isn't essentially having as big of an impact as you think it is. And here's what he says. I have no idea what's awaiting me, or what will happen when this all ends. For the moment, I know this. There are sick people and they need curing. And that is his response. And I thought about his response in light of what I'm going through, being an extremely privileged person who gets to witness the events that are going on in the world. And it seems like for a moment, I can't do anything about it. What's going on? I can't do anything about it. But Camus believes that the only way to resist the absolute absurdity of being a person in this world, in this absolutely careless world that doesn't care about your individual story, the only way to rebel against the reality is to live out your individual purpose that only you can fulfill. And for Rieu, that is, I was trained as a doctor. My vocation is to help people. It is to be a doctor and meet these people's needs. That's all I know. There are sick people and they need curing. And in any grander scheme of things, we are all individuals. And what that means by definition is that we are all so unique, so special in the things that we can offer this world. Maybe you're a doctor and you can be on site and help people there. Maybe you're a writer and you can craft a work that's going to touch people's lives. Maybe you're a painter, you're an artist, you're an architect, you're a, I don't know what. No matter what it is, there's an individual response within the whole. So back to the book, there's people like Dr. Rieu who keep doing what they are doing, keep doing what they're doing, while death is happening. And then the book begs the natural, absolutely like begging question of death. And how do we face death? You see, we live life and we all know that death is a fact. It's inescapable for all of us. None of us are going to escape death. And we know that. And yet somehow that is the first thing that we reject. And we live our entire lives in rejection and in kind of like willful forgetfulness of that fact. We don't want to remember that we're going to die. But then things such as genocides or COVID-19 or wars, these things break out, and all of a sudden the fact of death is right before our eyes and it's inescapable. And no matter how hard we want to avoid reckoning with the idea that we are going to die, the reminder is everywhere around us. And so I was journaling about not being able to like create art for art's sake, and I miss the slow life of like just picking up a book and reading it, blah, blah, blah. Whereas now my first instinct is to reach for my phone and start scrolling. Well, because that's such a reality, now the fact of death is equally as much of a reality. It is inescapable. I can no longer look away from people who are dying because now I'm reminded that I too will die. Now I'm reminded that I and them are made of the exact same stuff. And we're all going to end up in the exact same place. And now the question that Camus then poses is, with the reminders such as the plague. So by the way, the plague was published in 1947, which is just 2 years after the end of the Second World War. So he witnessed a world war. He witnessed mass killings, and people were dying and economies were destroyed and everything was just dying. Everything was on fire, much like it is right now. And so the question then doesn't become, is death inevitable? Because now there's this reminder that death is inevitable. The question becomes, how do I want to live in the face of this inevitable death? What will my rebellion against the absurdity be? What is my response, my own personal response? And that essentially is answering the question of, how do I find my place in this world? How do I make sense of my being in this world? And the only answer that I can think of, which I believe Camus was kind of giving us, is this fundamental belief in the goodness of people. Not that we are all born good or innocent or angelic or whatever. I believe that we, live in a fallen world and it's not utopia, so we're not perfect and nothing in life is perfect. But Camus says something that I believe is just where it's at. He says, there are more things to admire in men than to despise. And he says that towards the very end. Of course, it wasn't Camus, I think it was Ria. There are more things to admire in men than to despise. And I want to read you just a few quotes that also illustrate the driving force that makes us, or that gives us the strength to be or to pursue our being in this world in the fullest sense of the word. Here he says, and he knew also what the old man was thinking as his tears flowed. And he, Rieu, thought it too, that a loveless world is a dead world. And always there comes an hour when one is weary of prisons, of one's work, and of devotion to duty. And all one craves for is a loved face, the warmth and wonder of a loving heart. And the theme of love and goodness and the overall just nobility of mankind is such an overarching theme in the novel. And I believe that that is exactly what mobilizes us towards feeling these extreme feelings of injustice towards people we've never met before and people we're probably never going to meet anymore, ever. But we feel this strong, compelling sense to do something, like this urge to participate, to respond to the world around us. And I believe it's because there is an overarching theme of love in this world. There is an awareness, even if it's on a subconscious level, that there is so much to admire about men than to despise. There's so much more goodness. And I just think about what's going on right now, for example, with the many genocides that are going on. But you're seeing all of a sudden everyone from everywhere in the world uniting for a cause, speaking for those without a voice, defending the powerless, doing the bare minimum, whatever it is that they can do in order to make sense of, or present the picture as what it truly is, which is just inhumane and that all the suffering is just wrong and unfair in every way, shape, and form. But can you look at the individual heroes that are stepping up, risking their lives in order to leave a dent, a positive dent in the world? What is not to admire about that? And all of a sudden, the evil, the cruelty, the unfairness, the abuse of power becomes diluted. It doesn't seem like it's the rule anymore. It now is an exception, but it's a very strong and forceful exception. But it's a beautiful thing to be able to recognize that the evil is an exception, and therefore we have to believe that there's more to admire in men than to despise, and that love, in the end of the day, has got to be the overarching theme. It is what gave Rieu this force, this energy to keep treating every individual patient that he got as an individual, knowing full well that that was the best that he could do, and he wanted to do it so well, and it was from an abundance of love. And I want to read you another quote. It says, "The evil in the world comes almost always from ignorance, and goodwill can cause as much damage as ill will if it is not enlightened. People are more often good than bad, though in fact that is not the question. But they are more or less ignorant, and that is what one calls vice or virtue. The most appalling vice being the ignorance that thinks it knows everything and which consequently authorizes itself to kill. The murderer's soul is blind, and there is no true goodness or fine love without the greatest possible degree of clear-sightedness." And I think that's what I'm seeing that everyone on social media is now doing, is providing clarity so that those who were blinded by ignorance and allowed their ignorance to validate the evil, the pure evil that they are committing, that they can now hear a counter story, a counter narrative that is marked by love and hope and justice, that is marked by bravery and just valor and strength and nobility, and to have that be a reason why their ignorance can no longer be an excuse for their behavior. And that is why I believe that even though for this whole time I've been feeling so powerless and useless on my own, just feeling like I'm an island who can't really do anything or contribute anything to what's going on in the world, now I feel like if I have participated in any way, shape, and form in removing someone's ignorance or informing someone of something they might not have necessarily known before, and if that is my contribution in love, then I'm doing my part. Then I am resisting the absurdity of the whole, and I'm giving voice to the individuals. I'm humanizing the numbers. Even if all I can do is just reshare or repost a story by which to educate those whose ignorance has caused them to kill and to hate and to continue in the narrative that is evil, the narrative that feeds into the exception and not the rule, then I've done my part. But I feel more fellowship with the defeated than with saints. Heroism and sanctity don't really appeal to me, I imagine. What interests me is being a man. And when you think that being a man in Camus' world is also connoted as being good, as being admirable, then that's what I want. I don't want to be a hero. I don't want to participate by doing this grand gesture, by which to save the world, because at the end of the day, I'm not a politician. I don't have a podium. I don't have a stage from which to speak. I'm a person. All I am is a man. And I want to do my part. I want to speak for those who don't have a voice. And I'm just going to finish with this one quote that says, "They knew now that if there is one thing one can always yearn for, and sometimes attain, it is human love." And if you let love be the fuel that catalyzes you to speak or to do the bare minimum that you feel you alone can do, then do it. But let love be the reason. Let this belief in the just fundamental goodness of humankind, people are worth speaking for. People are worth fighting for. They're worth having the difficult conversations for. Let love be the catalyst, the driving force that lets you do, even if it's just the bare minimum. But if that's the best that you can do, don't underestimate the strength in that. Don't underestimate the power in that. And let love be the driving force. Because I believe in today's world, it's so easy. And I personally was living this way up until probably last night, where I was letting the evil cause me to hate and to have so much resentment and bitterness towards those who are evil, and let that be the driving force. So everything that I was sharing was from this place of angst and anxiety and just restlessness and anger and bitterness and just fury. And therefore, the narrative slowly was starting to meld itself towards the exception, the hate. But if we let love and if we believe in the fundamental goodness of what it means to be human, and we extend that to those who are suffering, now we can answer the question of, how do I find my place in this world with more ease? Because you will be able to find your place in this world from a place of love, and that will open the door. That will open your eyes and open the door for you to do what you can. And you will know what it is that you have to do. So if you, like me, have been feeling a little bit hopeless about what's going on in the world, if you've been feeling like you're just one person and you can't really reconcile your individual needs and your individual self and your individual privilege with the grander story and the grander narrative that's going on in the world, let me tell you that you're not alone. But realizing everything that we have just discussed is so profound. And it can give you the strength and it can give you the motivation from a good place to act and make a difference and realize that your existence in this world, your being in this world, even if you're curing patients in a war or in a plague where you know that the vast majority aren't going to make it, you're still going to have hope. You're going to have the love and the hope that are going to let you show up every single day, show up for the people that you are curing. That's just one example, but with just as much strength and just as much willpower and hope and energy as any other day, even within the face of an absurd catastrophe that's going on. So I hope this encourages you. I feel like I was encouraged just by remembering everything that I studied. And let me know in the comments below what kinds of content you'd like to see, but also let me know if you'd like me to make a more in-depth book review on The Plague by Albert Camus, so that you can maybe have like a clear idea of what it is that we discussed today in today's video. And yeah, I genuinely pray that this video finds you safe and well and happy, and I'll see you in the next one.